Welcome to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly produced by Ravens Recruitment, the experts in pharmacy career and locum services for over 30 years. Every episode is your gateway to new opportunities in the pharmacy profession. From expert advice to inspiring success stories, we're here to spark ideas, guide your career, and help you achieve your goals. Stay tuned. The next step in your pharmacy journey starts here.
Welcome back to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, the show where we sit down with the pharmacists who are shaping the future of the profession and building careers worth talking about. I'm your host as usual, Christy Lee Patterson, and today I have one of those episodes I've generally been looking forward to for a long time. My guest today is one of the most remarkable pharmacists in Australia. She is the Dean International at Curtin University's Faculty of Health Sciences, the Discipline Lead for Pharmacy at Curtin, and she sits on the PSA National Board, the PSA Foundation Board, the Board of Australians Medicine's Handbook. She is also a Fellow of the PSA, a Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and holds a PhD. Now, if you haven't guessed who it is, then I'm not sure where you've been the last few years, but I'm really proud to welcome Fei Sim to the Your Pharmacy Career Podcast. Fei, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Christy Lee. I think you're too over-generous. I always say one amongst equal, and I'm a pharmacist, full stop. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why you're on the podcast, because you are a pharmacist. The other thing I do need to mention before we kick off is that I didn't mention it in your bio there, but Fei is what's the official term? Past PSA president? Is that the official term?
Yes, yeah.
Now, Fei, whenever I chat to my guests on the podcast, I always like to start at the beginning of their career. And for you, this might surprise some people, but pharmacy wasn't exactly your childhood dream, if I'm correct. So I'd love to take the listeners through the journey of what was going on in your life during that time and what was it like creating, I guess, that path that led you to pharmacy.
You are absolutely correct, Christy Lee. Pharmacy was not my childhood dream. In fact, my very first childhood, I'm a dreamer, since young, as that's in my personality. So I dream a lot. So you can imagine I've dreamed of becoming many things. But my very, very first childhood dream was to actually become an artist, as in an artist who draws. Also, when I was very young, since I can remember, I love drawing. My mum and dad used to send me to art classes, and I was introduced to all kinds of paintings, watercolor, calligraphy, crayons, like graphite, so art used to be a huge part of my life when I was very young. But I remember when I was in year 1, I came back from school. There was an activity where we had to put in writing.
Oh, wow.
What our aspiration in life was. And I put down that I wanted to be an artist. And that report card went back to my parents. And there was a heavy, serious conversation. I could imagine I can remember that as a year 1. That was quite vivid. It was a serious conversation at the dining table where my dad sort of sat me down and say, art is something that you do to build your personality and your character. And what you do as a hobby, it's not going to be your job or your career. So I was asked, seriously, I was asked to go back there and change my selection.
No wonder you remember that, considering you were only in year 1.
Because I was so fearful of going to the teacher and say, I'm sorry, could I please, make a change? And I actually put down lawyer. So that was what I put down because I just, didn't know much. But in the end, what happened when I was in year 12, I actually wanted to do medicine. But then one of my neighbors was a pharmacist, husband and wife pharmacist team, and really sold pharmacy to my parents. Mm-hmm. And they were they are still very, very successful. And my parents were convinced. And I maybe still am, a very compliant daughter. And I just complied. And I did pharmacy. But when I started pharmacy in year 1, I did not know much about the role of pharmacist, mm-hmm. but I did know I obviously loved, chemistry and maths and science and people and, health. But very quickly I fell in love and I never looked back.
Oh, that's so lovely. As you were telling that story, I was trying not to giggle too much because I'm pretty sure I had a very similar conversation with my parents about what I wanted to do. I was one of those kids that loved being creative, loved art, would be drawing all the time. Pretty sure I drew on walls.
I drew on walls too. But that was bad of me to do that. But
Exactly. And I know you've got sisters, and there's a story that my parents loved to tell people all the time is, oh, yes, when Christy was little, she would draw pictures on the wall, but instead of writing my own signature, I'd write my sister's name. I was the oldest, though, and my sister was 2 years younger than me. And my younger sister didn't know how to write her name. So it was very obvious as to who was creating the drawings on the wall. But it was me and not my sister.
was that strategic of you? That's
Maybe, see, there was a strategic side of me very early on in my life, which may have may not been a good thing. But yes, I can definitely resonate with that. Art is something that you do as a hobby, because I remember that very early on. I don't think I ever had a sit-down conversation like you did, but it's something that was always in the back of my mind that I needed to do something real. And then the science side, I was always that person that was like making up concoctions at home, mixing twigs and sticks together to make tonics for my dolls and teddy bears. So I can definitely relate a little bit there. So I guess if we now fast forward a little bit, you've gone to university, you're doing your pharmacy degree. What was the next step for you? Was it, yes, community pharmacy? Was it hospital? Did you know where you wanted to do your internship, or is that something that you just kind of fell into?
So I knew very early on when I was studying pharmacy that what I loved about pharmacy as a profession is the interaction and the opportunity to engage with people and the different scenarios that you see every day, and you really get involved with people's lives. And to me, to be able to feel that I'm able to make an impact on another person is a privilege that I take very, seriously, that I feel it's absolutely an honor to do that. So when I was studying pharmacy, I worked part-time in a local community pharmacy, and they were very, very lovely to me. The owner, the staff, the manager there, and all the patients, and the people that came through the door. And I absolutely fell in love, and that was my home. And so then when I was when I had to choose where to do an internship, they offered internship to me, and I actually just accepted it. I didn't actually apply anywhere else. I sort of felt, I loved the place, I loved the people, but there were a number of things that I thought we could do that we were not doing. And I had a chat with the owner and the manager at the time, and they sort of said, look, we'll empower you, you go for it. So what I was referring to was, this was in 2009. So in 2009, this was before the years when pharmacists or pharmacy services, professional pharmacy services, had any funding. This was before the times of clinical intervention, mass checks, vaccinations. There was nothing. But I saw an opportunity where we could be doing and providing more diabetes services through NDSS at the time. I saw an opportunity where we could do skin checks, and I saw an opportunity where we could actually do vaccination services. But at the time, the legislation in Western Australia did not allow pharmacists to even be trained. And that was consistent across the country. But what we could do and what we did do was we then engaged a nurse practitioner. And we then had set days where the nurse would come in and be the vaccinator. So, and we did all sorts of very exciting things. And, like, for example, even ovarian cancer week and, that sort of stuff. Like when we did lots of public health promotional campaign, which I love. And I just I think, to me, it's not so much, it's, to me, where I've chosen my internship, and I don't regret that, not even a single second, is even though it was the same pharmacy, but there was an opportunity to make an impact. And I was with the right people where I felt we could work as a team. And we were able to implement and trial the implementation of a series of professional pharmacy services that was back then considered as very innovative and not heard of. And I could see, the impact that has on our patients and our clients' loyalty to the pharmacy, how it really changed the way they view us and looked at us. And I just know that, to be able to build that real connection with the people there, it was something very special. I mean, at one stage, we just constantly on a daily basis had people feeding us. They just bring food in, all sorts of baked goods and all that. And they were just from the locals and they come in, have a conversation about their health. And it was just something that was actually where I did my internship. And then after my internship, I did sort of feel, look, where do I want to go in my career and what do I want to do in pharmacy? Do I want to stay in pharmacy or do something else? Because I had wanted to do medicine before pharmacy. At that stage, I did contemplate if I should go back to medicine, but I did not entertain that idea very much because I sort of fell in love with pharmacy. But I felt that we could do so much more as pharmacists. But I was cognizant that regulation, the lack of awareness, unnecessary politics were all hindering the role of pharmacists at that stage. And also at that time, I had an opportunity to go back to university to do a PhD. And I sort of felt, look, do I want to do that? I could. And I was very passionate about medicine safety, and in particular medicine safety for women during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And so one thing led to another. And about 6 months into practicing as a pharmacist, as a registered pharmacist, I had an opportunity to come back to Curtin University and do a PhD with a scholarship. And it was in the area of medicine safety in breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. So I jumped on it, but I still practice as a pharmacist part-time. Then I started doing sessional teaching at university, which I love. Both my parents were teachers. So, teaching and learning was always something that's a constant at home. So it really felt like home. And then it was after I finished my PhD. It took about 5.5 years to finish my PhD. And after I finished my PhD, I sort of sat there and go, I was at a crossroad. Do I continue to invest my energy, time, money, career in pharmacy, or do I do something else? But at the time, I must say, I had a PhD at the time, but I felt that community pharmacy was very overlooked. I love, love, love community pharmacy. That's my passion. I've always felt that community pharmacy can do so much more, but we were not being fully utilized. And now there's a term for it as reaching the full potential. So back then I sort of felt, look, we've got so much potential, but potential is not fully unleashed. I did not use those words, but but I said, well, we could do a lot better. And so there was an opportunity, and I was with my ex-husband at the time, and he was a pharmacist too. And I sort of thought, look, I have two options. Option one, I continue to get my, hair even more wet with pharmacy. So buy into a pharmacy where I could have autonomy and I could be in a position to make changes and implement services in the way that I like. But if I were to do that, it involves money investment, time, and I'm further in. And I'm not going to sit back just to wait for miracles to happen or wait for one day when the government starts to realize the potential of pharmacists. So I sort of felt, look, if I'm going to be investing in this area and I'm a member of this profession, I have an obligation myself. We each have that, right? If you're a pharmacist, we all have that obligation. We all have to play our part. We are each, like I said, one amongst equal. We are each one small piece of puzzle, but we all need to, do our bit so we can actually complete this puzzle. So I sort of felt, look, what can I do in addition to working in my pharmacy? What can I do? So that was when I put my hand up to volunteer for PSA. Then there was an opportunity to work for the PSA for a small stint, which really opened up my network. And I love, love, love that. And then there was an opportunity to run for election to serve on the WA branch committee. So I did. And then I couldn't zip my mouth. I just, what I always feel. And then I served as the WA state president for 4 years. And then there was an opportunity after that to go and serve on the national board, which I did. And then I couldn't zip my mouth as well when I got onto the national board. And I was very, very fortunate and very, very grateful to be voted in as the national president. And then, and then that was how it sort of evolved. So I must say, I definitely, if you ask me, 18 years ago, would I think where I would be like right now, it's what we're doing absolutely hand on heart, I would tell you no. For me, it's about, I am a planner, but you can't plan that far ahead. But my big philosophy is work with what's in front of you, leverage the opportunity that's in front of you, make hay when the sun is shining, look after the people around you, and find your people, because you need your people to go far together. One person can't do everything, and it's always about doing, making the best of what's in front of you and one foot ahead of, the next.
Oh, absolutely. And even though I'm sure if you're anything like me, you do try and do everything yourself and try and do things now. But yes, I've learned the hard way that you really can't do everything like on your own.
No, but I also feel it's actually not, and I know, and I say this because many of, your listeners, Christine, would probably think, oh, I feel bad about asking someone else to do something or to delegate. But actually, a good leader needs to be able to bring the people around you up. And what that means is you need to be able to recognize the strengths of the people around you, give them the platform to shine. And actually, it's not about you doing it all, because it's about building succession and building a team with capability and capacity, because in life, we would all have our ups and downs. And you and I, Christine, we've chatted privately many times, and we all know, we're all humans. So we have our ups and downs. But in order for the momentum to continue and to continue to have an upward trajectory, you need a team, because what that means is when one person is on the low, someone else is able to lift them up, but also able to continue that momentum. And then it changes and evolves, because we're all, on our own cycle. And it's about actually doing. Yeah, so I think being able to build the people around you is actually something that we should all be doing. We should all be lifting each other up. And that's absolutely what we need to continue doing in order for us to all together as a group move forward, as a profession, move forward to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be anything too out there either. Like you could apply what you've just said to people on branch committees or boards or things like that. But it even just starts in the team that you're working with in the pharmacy, whether it's community or hospital or the team at the university. Yeah, the people around you, empowering them to be able to step up and do things as well. Now, Fei, thinking about where do we go next in your career journey, you've started to touch on your pathway, pathway to presidency. That sounds like a book. Maybe a book by Trump. I'm not sure. Pathway to presidency. I'm sure that I know you enough now that you didn't set out to, I'm going to be president of PSA one day. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I think I'd love to know at what point where you thought, maybe when you were president of your branch, and then there was an opportunity to sit on the board. And as someone that has sat on a branch committee for PSA in the past, I am now have been very grateful to be re-elected again. And at the time when I was in ECP, I didn't really fully understand the role of what a branch committee was and what the role of the national board of the PSA was. And so whilst I felt like I had a lot to say, so Fei, maybe I took a leaf out of your book as well. And I was so passionate, but I didn't really fully understand what the roles were. And I have to say now, coming onto the branch committee again, I can see some great changes, and the onboarding procedure is just leaps and bounds ahead as to what it was, I think, 1 or 2 terms ago. So for you, when you thought, okay, there's an opportunity to sit on the national board, at that point in time, did you know what you were stepping into? Like, did you have clarity around what the differences were, or I guess have that insight as to why you would even bother putting your hand up in the first place to make that leap to the national board?
That's a very good question, Christy. So I think, look, we are all learning every day. The day you feel like you're not learning is probably when you should just keep going. So you learn something new. And this is something my dad says all the time, is that when you start to feel very comfortable at a place and you feel like you're not learning, that's when you should move, because life is short, but life is also about how you are able to play your part in this bigger society and to make an impact. And to do that, you want to be able to learn something new so that we ourselves continue to grow, but also our contribution will continue to grow. So I think, first of all, I think if anyone is new to the branch committee or new to any board roles, we all have our first time on everything. So first of all, I think we're all learning. No one's going to sit there and think, oh, you're new, you don't understand or whatever, because we're all here to help each other and lift each other up. I think I've always said this, right? I mean, never chase never put your aspiration, for example, right, or your goal as a particular title or a particular position or a particular dollar amount of money. Because trust me, I think if you focus on what you genuinely care about, because what you genuinely care about is also going to determine how well you do in that role. Because if you care about something, when things get tough, it gets you out of bed because you get reminded of it's something you love doing, something you care about. And when you do that, you would do it well. And when you do something well, I guarantee you one thing will lead to another, because there will be a place, there will be a path. And therefore, don't worry about the title or the position or the money, because I genuinely believe that when you focus on something that you care about and you do it well, the position and the money will come after that, because this is just natural phenomenon in life. That's the cycle. Because if you focus on to me anyway, if you focus in the different order, sometimes it doesn't allow us to also fully explore who we are and what we are actually good at. Because it may be that you've heard about, oh, this is a high position, so I must like it. It must be good for me. Or someone else is doing that. It must be good for me. But we're all different individuals. It's not going to be sustainable if we're not actually doing something that truly align with our core values, because that's going to drain you. If it doesn't align, it's going to drain you and it's not sustainable. And we all live in the world where we all go through cycles of burnt out, and that's something we need to bear in mind. Moving from branch committee, so I think if any of your listeners, so congratulations, Christy, for being, elected back. I think that shows a lot about, who you are in a contribution, and you have a profile as well where people look up to you and go, right, I'm going to vote for Christy Lee because you will be able to, move the profession along, which then comes back and help me as a pharmacist member. So I think that's actually, that says a lot when the profession votes you in, when your peers vote you in, it means a lot. And you've got experience serving on the branch committee. But for your other listeners, if they are new to the branch committee, or if they are contemplating in the next cycle to put their hand up, always encourage that, because we do need diversity, we do need renewed blood and ideas. A branch committee of the PSA is an elected position where it's elected by the membership, but you don't actually carry any fiduciary responsibility because you're not a board. You're not an ASIC board director per se. But serving on the national board as a board director, then there will be fiduciary responsibility that comes with serving as a board director. And I would highly recommend that anyone who have the aspiration to do that, to consider professional development in terms of governance. So you could do trainings with like the Australian Institute of Company Directors, or there are other providers these days as well that can offer professional development opportunities in governance. So it's not just corporate governance, but it's also understanding the fiduciary responsibility, risk, finance, like fiscal understanding, how to set strategy. So these are all important professional development opportunities. But again, I think those are the skills, right, that we can learn in order to upskill ourselves to do the job better. But it needs to come back to your core belief, your core value. Why do you want to serve on a peak body? Why? And the reason has to be something that is of real meaning and purpose. And to me, that has to be, and people's reasons could be different, but particularly because I see great opportunity for the pharmacy profession, and as a member of the profession, I want to be able to play my part, be able to network and meet new people where I can share ideas and together we grow, we learn, we exchange thoughts. And so I think there are all kinds of reasons, but what I want to encourage your listeners to do is to really hone into the purpose and why you want to do this. And because then when things are tough, you can always go back to the purpose. And you asked me this earlier, Christy. You said, when I became the national president, was it as I thought the role would be? To be honest, I I have very successful predecessors, and
Yes.
they've done very, very well, and they're absolute role models for me. And, I look at them and I remember saying, I'm not them, I can't do those things. But they were supporting me and sort of encouraging me and saying, we're not going to leave you. We're going to be around, and we're going to all grow and learn. And I think that's something that PSA does really well, which is succession, but also we have volunteers who cross over their terms so that the corporate knowledge can be retained, but yet at the same time does not stifle opportunity for innovation. So I think that's actually something that PSA does very well. I remember, in my maybe even up to the first 24 months of being in the role, every single day I sit down and go, oh, this is something new. Like, it's constant. There's always something new. But I absolutely enjoyed every moment. Of course, there have been very tough moments where many tears, many times because I live in the West, the meetings happened over the East. And I remember vividly many occasions on my way. So on my way there, I would usually be working on the plane. But on my way back, there were many occasions where I would just be in tears because I would be feeling so drained, absolutely exhausted physically, mentally. And often, we don't get what we want from what I've set to achieve and my expectations and the disappointment. And there have been many tough times, but I would always tell myself, right, I'm going to acknowledge how I feel that night. I always take the last plane out of, wherever I am after the meeting. So I often reach back in Perth, lucky the time difference, because it's, you gain hours when you come back. But I always land back in Perth around about 10, 11 p.m. And I always tell myself, I'll allow myself that night to acknowledge my feelings, feel that way. Tomorrow morning when I wake up, it's a fresh new day. And I remind myself the next day why I'm doing what I'm doing. And brain is actually very powerful. So if you haven't heard of this thing, I'm also very interested in psychology. And this is actually all based on science. There's the power of prediction. You can actually train your brain to think in certain ways. And I think that's, the past 4 years in particular, I've tried to work on myself in terms of compartmentalization, in terms of my thoughts, and also really training my brain to move on things and really be future focused, future looking. If something has happened, try to learn from it. But what has worked for me is not just brushing my negative feelings away. I've realized it's actually acknowledging that it's there, but then giving myself a set time when I'm allowed to feel sorry for myself, feel sorry for the situation, go down the rabbit hole. And then I've got a set time up until whatever particular point. And usually for me, it's overnight. So when I wake up, I'm telling myself that's a fresh new day.
I think that is really good advice, and giving you the opportunity to feel those feelings. And I think that you can relate that to any aspect of your life, I think. But it's really good because sometimes you do feel like you need to push feelings aside. It's something that I've struggled with in corporate settings as well. I get very passionate about things, and I actually now think that it is a strength. I used to call it a weakness, and I don't believe it is a weakness. I think it's a good thing to be able to show empathy, and I think that you've done that very well in your position as a president. Another person that comes to mind that does that well is Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand ex-Prime Minister. And I've been told before that you're too emotional, or I've gotten upset in meetings because things didn't go the right way, or sometimes I couldn't even explain why I felt so emotional about something or passionate about something. And then sometimes I would beat myself up about it. But I think, giving yourself that opportunity to go home, set that time, that worry time or downtime, rabbit hole time, is something that, is good to do. And it's actually probably quite therapeutic as well. I guess I've also started doing that and even coaching some of the pharmacists and pharmacy assistants that I've worked with over the years to do that when there's been a situation in a pharmacy that's caused them maybe to feel a bit anxious or make them feel stressed or angry or things like that. And I just say, go out, take 10, 15 minutes and just acknowledge what's going on. And you don't have to put on a happy face for the next customer. Just take that time out So I think you could apply that to few different situations there.
Well said.
Pharmacy Daily is a proud supporter of your pharmacy career podcast. If you're in the pharmacy world, it's a great resource to stay up to date with the latest industry news. To subscribe, just head to pharmacydaily.com.au to get the newsletter delivered straight to your inbox.
The other thing I'd wanted to ask you is, as the national president, you were the first female president. Is that correct? Yeah. That's huge. And then also too, being like you're bringing your diversity as well. You're also then from WA, not the East as well. When you were first elected, did you feel that extra pressure because you were the first? Is that something that you felt, I guess, first of all, I'm sure you would have felt proud like that. That's good. Like that has to feel amazing to be the first woman president of the PSA. But to me, I feel like that would hold a lot of responsibility as well. So maybe if you could talk through that experience from when you were first elected and even now as you reflect back on your time as presidency.
Yeah, I think first of all, Christy Lee, I think, I really genuinely want to say that I think it is absolutely a privilege to be the first female president. However, I'm definitely not the first female or the first woman to be in leadership position in pharmacy. And there have been many women, I would say, before me who would have made excellent president that I have a lot of respect for. So I think which is, if I take the pragmatic view, it actually can be a sad thing to be saying this. If I'm saying, there've been many other women before me who could have been the really good, excellent first president, but obviously many things were circumstantial. Mm-hmm. I do believe, there is a reason for everything, but that doesn't mean that, their efforts and everything was not there. I think there have been many, 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 many other women leaders before me who definitely deserve the recognition. And coming back to your question, I think, I must say I did feel the pressure sometimes, but most of the times I think I get too excited and my excitement just...
That's good.
Joys me. But I think, though, coming back to the sort of pressure, in our separate conversations, Christy, I did sort of open up to you and say that I have come to the realization that my biggest enemy is myself. I think that I have been very fortunate that PSA is actually a very supportive, collegiate, inclusive organization. And I say that, with my, hand on heart, that's something I would say even if I, the end of
it. Yes.
Say that, absolutely. I've been very fortunate that it's a very supportive environment where I have men, women, non-binary supporting myself in that role. So I'm from that regard, from my peer support, I've never felt that, from an external perspective that I was made to feel I was inferior just because I'm a woman. But the fact that sometimes I do question myself and I do find that when I reflected on my own feelings and experience, I do find that I am not as confident in certain circumstances because of how I look, who I am, on the things I can't change, female and, from a diverse cultural background. And then I think I have come to this current realization that obviously nothing is absolute, right? There's always, nothing is absolute. But in the vast majority of times, I think it's in my head. If I be honest, I think I've been my biggest enemy when it comes to a lack of internal confidence. There you go, admitting to you and your audience. I doubt myself all the time. I play back conversations. I think about things, and that's probably also why before bed I do a lot of reflection, and I do feel sad most nights. I know I do that. That's because, I get concerned about what I've done. Have I done the wrong thing? Have I upset someone? Have I done what I could? Because, if I use a very explicit example, right, during my presidency, there have been many, I would say, significant policy changes. Mosquito dispensing, vaping, regulatory changes, 8CPA, strategic agreement, college, all of those things we've had many difficult conversations, but many of those conversations or negotiations that I've been in, I've always felt that I've always worried that, if it's because of my own incompetence or inexperience in this space and I'm not doing as best a job a person in this role can do, then there can be real consequences on people's lives. If we're talking about, people's take-home pay, if we're talking about how services are being funded, we're talking about regulations that affects what we can't do, that affects patients. And so I always remind myself that there are real consequences on real people, whether pharmacists or patients and others. So I think that I must say, it goes back a lot about to me about, am I the right person? And I start to then go into that RHT, rabbit hole time, like you call it. Yeah. So but then again, I always tell myself, right, try to reflect that night, allow myself to think through those things. But then the next morning, it's a new day, focus on what I can do. If I think I haven't done a good enough job the day before, because there are certain things, certain arguments that I could have put forward in a more articulate way and I did not, then I actually write it down. I write it down and I go, right, when given the opportunity in this new day, how am I going to do it? If the meeting has passed, what other avenues can I take to make that message, to send that message there to the person that I need to hear? And I think the other thing is that I absolutely love pharmacy and I genuinely believe in, a strong profession leading to a strong health system. I genuinely believe that. And I think I would always go back to that. And it upsets me as well sometimes if people don't fully understand the role we play, the role of pharmacist. But I then realized that when you take the time to explain to people, whether they're policymakers in, decision maker position, if you take the time to explain to them and make them understand, I often find that more often than not, they sit there and they go, actually, I've never thought about it this way. No one's actually ever explained it in this way to me. And it does change people's perspectives because people's actions and their decisions are based on their perception. And if perception is based on limited understanding, that is an action that we can address. I mean, there is an action there that we can take to address this perception. So yeah, that's been my life, I think. Yes. We've got a very good new national president now, Professor Norton, that I've got a lot of respect for Mark, and Mark is absolutely doing an amazing job. And even during my presidency, Mark was one of my vice presidents, together with the amazing Caroline Darnandis, and they were always there with me. And Mark in particular was, involved in a number of the big strategic projects that we embarked on. And because of that, he was able to hit the ground running as soon as he took over the baton. And he continues to be a very good friend of mine. We'll continue to support each other. And I think also because, I would say he's more experienced than I am, But despite that, everyone's journey is different. But I can only, try to understand what he must be feeling and what he must be going through. And sometimes in some cases, it does feel lonely because you're doing, you're traveling on your own, you are going to meetings on your own. I do feel, a lot of those decisions, even though, we have a board and we have working groups, but I do feel a very strong sense of responsibility and accountability because it goes back to my point earlier about it has real impact on people's livelihoods. And that's something that I think sometimes weighs me down, but also in many other times gives me the motivation to keep going.
Yes. I think that's good. And it's interesting that you think that he's potentially more experienced, but I think, again, it's different experiences. Everyone brings different life experiences and things. And when I interviewed Mark, I loved getting to know him more and his journey and to hear his story growing up and how he saw how hard it is for communities that are in lower socioeconomic areas and the impact that happens. And I could see his passion coming through.
Yes.
And it's wow, he's just from that impact of growing up near that area, he's now able to actually assist with advocacy and policy change to make those outcomes for those people, which I think is amazing. And I think it's important to remember the impact that you have on our patients, and whether you're in advocacy or on branch committees or the national president of the PSA, when you say you reflect back on that impact, whether it's a curse or not, to sometimes reflect on that impact. But I think it's important to know that, you're actually changing people's lives.
Yes. And, also the other thing I think about Mark that I want to mention is that he's one of the most authentic person I know. He genuinely cares. And I can tell the profession now, hand on heart, he's someone who he genuinely cares about this work.
Yes.
He genuinely cares about doing good work. And he's someone that is he's a man with integrity. And I can tell you firsthand, he's someone who looks to lift the people around him up. And also, he actually has a very good interpersonal skill. So you can imagine, how I mentioned earlier about the difficult conversations that we have. It's not always difficult conversations with an external party, right? Because in on anything that's contentious, even within our own tent, we encourage robust discussions on topic. That's why we're a good team. But the robust discussion sometimes also comes with some fire and bring views. And you can imagine we're all type A personalities. So we all have our own strong views. And so Mark has consistently been able to just do his magic, right? And just be able to bring people together, help each other see each other's views. And he does that so subtly but effectively in the background that you don't realize at the time when he was doing that. But when the thing is finished, you realize that that's what he was doing. And so I think, at times like that, when our profession is going through significant change, you need to have someone who's down to earth, who's grounded, but someone who's operationally focused and very pragmatic, but also have good interpersonal skills to be able to lead the organization and the profession. And that's why I say at the very beginning, in early this year, that Mark is definitely the right person for the role. And there's always a time and place for a leader. I think that's what's good about our profession, is that we do recognize that and we evolve and we support and bring the next person up.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's very important that we do that. I guess now, Fei, what's next for Fei in the post-presidency?
Good question. Yes, good question. So I've come back to Curtin University, and I started a role about 3 months ago as Dean International of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Curtin University. And it's also something that I feel is a steep learning curve for me. It's a new area, but I do feel very passionate about this area in terms of what we can do as an institution in the global stage, but also what we can do from a health perspective. So there are over 15 disciplines under the faculty. I'm quite passionate about multidisciplinary team approach to healthcare. And I think we're very fortunate in Australia that we actually have world-class health system. I know we have our, challenges, but if we, I was born and raised in Malaysia and Singapore. So, I understand in many other countries, especially in developing countries, what we have here in Australia is actually something that we take for granted, and we should not take for granted. So there are many other places, around the world that look to Australia to learn from us, to learn about our approach to health management, to what we do in terms of leveraging the full potential of each of the disciplines. So that's something that I feel very passionate about, that I think we have a social responsibility to do. But I'm also very grateful to Curtin University. I did my bachelor, did my PhD here, bought my first house, like literally 5 minutes drive from Curtin. My sisters work at Curtin. I work at Curtin as well, and so I think it's a place that I feel it's always very special to me, and it's home to me, and I really like Curtin's values when it comes to being very, very, very inclusive. That's something that's very special. But also, I turned 40.
Yes,
40 is a big number, but if I'm lucky, I'm only halfway through my life, maybe not even halfway through if I'm lucky.
Yes.
And I think what I really want to do in my 40s is continue the momentum with professional growth, because that's something that I feel is very important to me, because I feel like that's where I'm making an impact, a positive impact. But I also want to really invest some in myself when it comes to personal growth. I want to see new things, learn new things, meet new people, and broaden my perspective. And I want to visit 40 different countries in my 40s.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes, this is fun.
And I think the world is big. Come to real, I would say I've never probably previously thought about it that way, but I think I've come to starting to appreciate that the world is big. People are diverse. That also adds the richness, and it's very interesting. I find that very interesting, and I like to explore, and I don't want to limit myself to, the possibilities. I know it sounds like, it's like what people write on their, wall, but that's genuinely how I feel at the moment. Maybe because I'm in that zone at the moment, having turned 40, I was having this big, moment of realization about who I am, what I want to do. But I genuinely believe that, I want to be able to advance not just my professional development, but also personal growth, because I think I have maybe neglected my personal growth a little bit. And when I say personal growth, I mean in all aspects, physical health, mental health, emotional well-being, personal perspectives, and to be a stronger person inside. And because if I can love myself, I can look after myself, then have the ability to go and care for someone else. So I really want to do that. And I want to learn more about myself. I know we're all evolving and changing, but I really want to get to know myself better. And that way I can be a better person. Then I can be a better person for the people around me and a better person for the society. And the week, I must say, the week I turned 40, was a very special week for me, because the lovely, lovely, lovely friend Anne Tuchart in Sydney, she organized, and Chris, they organized for us to go and see my all-time idol person that I have a lot of, that I admire a lot, Michelle Obama.
Oh, yes.
And she was so sweet that they even arranged for a one-on-one catch-up with Michelle.
Wow.
And Michelle wrote me a message on one of her books, and it's just something very special to me. But I want to explain why I look up a lot to Michelle. And it's just the values and everything that I admire a lot, and that I do appreciate, and that I hope to have in my life. Michelle is someone who is wise. She is mature. She's very, very, smart. We know that. But at the same time, she was able to support her husband, Barack, to complete a very successful presidency whilst not losing herself, and continued to care for her family, her two daughters. And then even after Barack finished his presidency, Michelle continued her momentum to do the charitable work and to continue to drive the things that she believes is the right thing to do. And she continues to do that. And to me, it's that she was able to balance that, but do it so eloquently, but also with such great purpose and integrity. And she's so genuine, authentic in her dealings and her working. And you mentioned Jacinta Ardern earlier. I do love Jacinta as well. And so Jacinta and Michelle Obama, I just have a lot of respect for leaders like them. And I do hope that one day I would grow up to be like them.
Yes. I love how you say when you grow up. I don't think anyone ever grows up, right? Not fully. You're always learning, always changing. And I think that's really important in life. So, Faye, we've come to the almost end of the podcast. And I'm sure there's so many things that we could talk more about and delve into different areas and go into more detail. But what I've started to doing this season with my guests is do what I like to call the Fast Five. So we haven't done this before on the podcast, but what I will do is ask you 5 questions, and just the first thing that pops into your head, don't think about it too much, and we'll just see where it goes. So are you ready for the Fast Five, Faye?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Bite more than you can chew and start chewing like mad.
I love this. And you know what? I've heard you say this before, and I remember, yes, I love it.
My accountant said that to me, and I remember it until now.
Love it. Now, the second thing is, what's one thing that pharmacists should stop underestimating about themselves?
Our potential. We are trained and positioned to make positive impact on someone's life and death in some circumstances. So never talk down on yourself. never belittle our contribution. We have to be proud about ourselves, be humble as a person, but never be humble about our profession.
100%. I think that deserves an amen. I love that. Next question is, what's the skill you wish you had developed earlier in your career?
So this is interesting. Accept that I would make mistakes.
Yes. I think that is very good advice.
Accept that and be okay with it.
Yes. Yeah, that's definitely something I wish I developed earlier in my career. Absolutely.
Because we suffer, right? We suffer and we burn ourselves internally. We kick ourselves. But then that doesn't, I mean, it's helpful to an extent to help us reflect and be a better person. But sometimes it doesn't help make things better because because I think sometimes when we make mistakes, we feel bad because we feel like we've let someone down, right? We've done the wrong thing. We've let someone down. But that person that you feel that you've let them down, actually, they want their issues to get better. Us sitting in our own bed and kicking ourselves actually doesn't help that situation for that person. So the best thing we can do for that person is actually acknowledging that, right, if time could turn back, we would have done different things. We could have done it better and then go and do it better. But I read this the other day, right? And I think it's important to share this. It's about saying sometimes we have regrets in life, like mistakes, right? We go, I shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. But even if time could turn back, given the knowledge, the perspective, and the level of experience we had at that time, however many years ago, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, even if time could turn back, we would have made the same decision. So it's not actually fair on ourselves to judge the back then us on the decisions that we made based on the skills, the knowledge, the experience, and the perspective that we have right now. So that goes back to, a lot about accepting that we can make mistakes, but focus on the future and go, right, okay, fine, I did not do the best, and that has some consequences. What can I do now?
Exactly. That's it. Now, the last question is a bit of a fun one. Now, is there a book, a podcast, or a resource that you have been maybe obsessed with at the moment, or maybe something that you've read or heard of in the past that you would recommend to our listeners to read or listen or watch or consume? And it doesn't have to be related to pharmacy if you don't want to.
I see. The first thing that came to my mind is The Diary of a CEO.
Oh, yes.
But there are lots. Like there's like, I want to say, there's the whole series of Michelle Obama's books. Well, I'm actually currently reading a book, which is the Rebuilding Yourself After a Relationship Breakdown book. So, there is that. There is also, all the books about, the Marie Kondo book is quite good as well. Yeah. So simplifying in your life. There is the Building Your Legacy. I actually love self-help books. I don't know. It's like a recovery healing thing for me. Like, it's a thing for me. I actually quite like doing that. And yeah, I think that there are lots. Yeah, lots and lots.
Well, I think that's quite a healthy maybe addiction, if you call it. And for the listeners, you can't see my background, but my bookshelf is adorned with so many self-help books and biographies and things like that. So it's actually, sometimes it can be an expensive habit, but when I do a lot of traveling, my thing is I always will buy a book in an airport, and I don't always read them. Like, I think I've got like 6 or 7 books on the go at the moment, but that's my guilty pleasure is airport books.
Yes, there's something very therapeutic about reading and reading non-academic journals.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Fei, for the conversation. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit more and know more about your journey, about how you got to be the PSA president. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you, Christina. It's been absolutely a joy and a privilege to be chatting with you. Thank you.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Fei, so much for spending the time with us today to talk about your career to date. I've really enjoyed learning more about you and what's coming next for Fei. For our listeners, I'll have all of her details in the show notes. So if you want to follow her on LinkedIn, or maybe you want to do a PhD under Fei, that would be pretty cool. All the details are in the show notes. Thank you again, Faye, for being a great guest, and I look forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Your Pharmacy Career Podcast, proudly sponsored by the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. The PSA is committed to empowering pharmacists through advocacy, innovation, and industry-leading professional development. To become a member or learn more about how the PSA can support your career, visit www.psa.org.au. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your colleagues, and join us next time as we continue to explore your pharmacy career journey.